This is Selena Yvette, host of Stories from Planet Earth. Thanks for listening to the following show on Public House Media.
Hey, you're listening to Girl Hustle with Lee and Chelsea. We are two girls making our way in sales and entrepreneurship.
We set out to make this podcast after entering our late 20s and realizing we were hitting a wall and felt like our lives and careers were stagnant. After expressing this feeling to countless other women, we realized we weren't alone.
So each week we're bringing you real conversations with real people that are authentic, realistic, and relatable in hopes that you can grow into the best version of yourself. So strap in and let's hustle. Hey friends,
Hi.
We're back and this is so exciting.
It is so exciting.
So, just a little bit about us and the newness that we have going on. We have a very interesting setup right now. Should we talk about this, Lee?
I really think we should because I'm assuming you know because you're listening to this, we are now, again, we're called Girl Hustle. We are no longer CJ and Self.
Girl Hustle.
And I will have to say that our setup right now is a hustle, and we're hustling it because
I'm breaking the sweat over here.
Chelsea and I, we have very crazy schedules, and we have to plan out the most ridiculous times to meet with each other, and sometimes you just have to literally, finagle a little situation.
Yep.
And so right now we're sitting halfway in a closet, halfway out. Chelsea has a giant foam board that we've just surrounded, making a...
It's a memory foam for, my pull-out couch.
Yeah. And it's just, making a little cone of excellence right now around the door.
I just want you guys to have good sound, okay?
Chelsea's in the cone. I'm in the doorway holding the cone.
We got a leg up.
Got a hand up over here. And this is what we do for you all because we care and we want to do a great job. Yeah. Anyways. Chelsea, what's been going on with you, girl?
What's been going on with me? What's been going on with me? That's a really good question. A whole lot of nothing besides, just working.
Yeah.
Reinventing myself.
Totally.
That is my thing I've been doing. I've been reinventing myself. Been doing the same thing for so long. So I don't want to change. I just want to emerge.
Yeah, I love that.
Something better in my sales career.
I love that. Yeah. I think that, in sales especially, it can get so hard and, you have to reinvent yourself constantly. Because if you don't, you'll just...
Lose yourself.
Lose your mind, too.
I felt like I was about to do an Eminem song right there. Lose yourself.
I would have loved it.
Anyways, let's talk about your life. It's way more exciting.
Hi. My life has been kind of chaotic past couple weeks. Business is up and rolling off the ground, you guys. It is here. It's happening. Taking subscriptions.
So subscribe.
Yeah. Name drop, ad drop, monthlymain.com. Follow me on Instagram at monthlymain. Like us on Facebook, monthlymain. Bringing you hair ties, stuff that you lose every month for an affordable price and with a motivating message every month. And that's it. And
it's fun to get something really cute in the mail. So
thank you. I love my Birchbox is a thing that I have. I love it. It's so cute.
This is better than Birchbox.
And they're also kind of, not that they're stealing my ideas or anything because Birchbox doesn't know me, but they also now are doing monthly themes. And it's just that's just the trend that these subscription boxes are going. And I'm like, wow, okay, I already thought of that and you guys are doing it, but it's cool. But I like it. And I love the fact that clearly they're doing it because people enjoy that.
Yeah.
And I'm happy
you're ahead of the trend.
I am. And I'm happy that I can do that because even though hair ties and bobby pins and elastic bands, it's they're not that important. To be honest, it's just.
But when you don't have one,
it's I lose them all the time. So it's a convenient service. But if I can offer just a little extra something to brighten your day, that really means a lot to me. Yeah. And so that's
also we have this every Thursday.
Exactly. So there you go. Sorry, had a little.
No, this is her life.
Little spawn con.
We just talked about your life, and this is your life. So.
And that's pretty much all I've been doing. So. Cool.
Yeah, we've been rebranding, hustling, doing the things.
Yeah, girl hustling.
So, let's talk about, we have changed a lot of things, kind of revamped reinvented ourselves in a way. And I think today's podcast is something different than we have ever had.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that.
Ever have. And
yes.
it has made a huge impression, like, on my life. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah,
it's one of the hard conversations or honest, truthful conversations that you have to have with yourself and not be so in your own world. You've got to open your eyes that there's other people, other impressions, other feelings, things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And so today on the show, you'll hear we had an interview with one of my really good friends, Kara Delost. She's incredible. She's an associate brand manager at KFC US, and this girl, I mean, you'll hear this girl has so many accolades and has done so many things, and you're just gonna be like, what? How
she
are
describes
you?
it like, I brush my teeth in the morning.
Yeah, she's incredible. I love her. I just have always just admired and respected her for how much, I mean, she epitomizes girl hustle, I think. And so, but a part of that, you know, Kara is a woman of color. She is an adoptee. And she has really, really just embraced her culture and has kind of like found her voice through talking about, you know, diversity and inclusion within different nonprofits that she's been involved with, different boards, and now at KFC. And
other ways to view diversity.
Yes.
Which is really cool.
Yeah. And we had a really good conversation. And I mean, obviously, I don't want to spoil anything because you'll obviously get to hear all of it. But dude, it's like, Chelsea and I left this pod recording and we sat in her car for like 30 minutes and just had like a real like heart to heart of just like, what are we as white people doing to like be allies? Are we doing enough? Are we ignoring some things? Are we like,
or just things that we see on a day-to-day basis we don't think anything about?
Yeah. And it's just like, what are we like, are we being kind of like dormant and not, are we being complicit?
There we go.
You know? And so it was such an eye-opening and such a wonderful experience. And we really hope that after you listen to this interview that you'll be more open to having these conversations with people. And I don't know. I just loved our podcast.
It was good. It was very uplifting. And not only that, but she talks about things that made her career so successful.
Oh, it had the best of both worlds.
We had all of the things. From being a working woman to be a diverse woman to working her way from the ground up to reinventing herself to how she did what she did and how and why she's so good at it.
Yeah.
And all of those.
She's just an incredible human.
So let's just keep it simple and let Kara do the rest here.
Yes. All right. Here's our interview.
Thanks, guys.
Yay. Bye.
All right, everyone. Today we are really excited. We have a really awesome guest on the show. Today we have Kara Delost. She is an associate brand manager at KFC US. Kara and I have known each other for a while. We were in the same sorority in college. A lifetime ago. And I personally just think Kara is really awesome, and I really thought that she could give some awesome insight for you guys today. So, hello, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So for people who might not know you, kind of tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into branding, kind of your, pathway until where you are right now.
Okay, great. Well, I'll try to give the condensed version. So I've now been in Louisville for 13 years.
Wow.
Been here for a bit. It is definitely home now. Got my degree at U of L in marketing. And I actually had no idea what I wanted to do with that. Advertising is actually how I got into the industry, but advertising was not a part of the marketing curriculum whatsoever. So I kind of just fell into it. So basically out of school, I immediately got into social media marketing and digital marketing through advertising. And I just fell in love with it. I've always loved the creative part of marketing, business, because you got to make money somehow. And I just have always followed brands, whether it's through fashion or just through brands that I was consuming on my own. And then after 7 years of advertising, just got really sick of dealing with creative directors and kind of the rigmarole of always missing deadlines and kind of just feeling like my work wasn't really going anywhere. It's just like you do so much work in an agency setting and it goes out into the world and you never really get to see the effect that it has more often than not. So then I took the plunge into brand management and corporate America at its finest. And it's been 2 years now since I've joined the KFC US team, and it's just been really great working for a global brand. I think it's given me a whole new look into marketing. I think when I first got into it, my intention was that I would get a few years of brand management under my belt and then go back into the advertising side of branding, but totally got hooked on brand management, and I don't see myself really going back to that side of marketing for a while. And it's just been kind of a crazy ride since.
That's awesome. Now I feel like you're like downplaying.
I know.
Like,
You need to
you're
figure
like
out something
downplaying
here.
your like old like ad life, because I feel like when I lived in California, I just feel like I would get on Facebook and it's like every other week you were like being recognized for like top 30 under 30, like all this like crazy stuff. So do you have any like accolades off the top of your head that you can just like brag about for a minute?
Oh, I see. I should be marketing myself better, right? So let me rewind a little. So back to my agency days, the way that my career kind of took off there was that I wrote a blog for my agency at the time about Facebook timeline for brands. So I'm like really aging myself here. And it actually got picked up by Forbes. So I was like 22, fresh out of college, didn't know the hell I was doing, to be quite frank. And I get a phone call from someone at Forbes wanting to speak to Cara Delost. And I was like Forbes? They're like, yeah, Forbes. So I ended up getting like nationally cited in Forbes, and it kind of blew up, and then got involved with the American Advertising Federation through the Louisville chapter there, where I was recognized as a Hot 10 talent right out of school. And then what did I do?
She's like, I just like woke up and kind of fell into advertising. What the?
Yeah, there was a tornado, and then the house fell on me, and then I woke up, and everything was in black and white. No, and then after that, got really involved because, this is what I would love to even just this is where I should really be saying. So many people helped me along the way. Like I said, I didn't really know what I wanted to get into, and I had a network of people who looked at my resume, who did mock interviews with me, who introduced me to other people. So I got involved with the young advertising professionals after I won that award, because I wanted to pay it forward. I wanted to help other people who didn't know what they were doing and what they wanted to get involved in. So I took over the young advertising professionals from there. That's also how I started getting into some of the diversity inclusion stuff, because I took over being vice president of diversity and inclusion for the Advertising Federation as well. And I think a few years after that, got named like 30 people to know in advertising and marketing in Louisville by Business First, I think, after that. And then at the time when I was at the agency, was like the youngest person to be named director at my company, and just was doing other stuff in the community. I mean, that was like definitely the time in my career where I was like overextending myself, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and networking was kind of the thing that felt natural. But then I was like hitting that saturation point where it's like I was on every board, and I was running home after work, and just like going to this meeting and that meeting. And I think that's kind of where, when I shifted into brand management, that's when like all that stuff fell off. So I kind of I really got into it, and I feel like I got what I needed out of it, got a lot of press, got a lot of involvement, and it was great for me on the surface level, but definitely like on my day-to-day work stuff, felt like I wasn't getting challenged enough. Yeah. Like I hit that point where it's like, I think like the phrase I was using, I was getting lots of pats on the back, but not any kicks in the ass. So it was kind of like,
oh my gosh, I freaking love that.
I mean, everyone's like, you go girl, you're a rock star. And like, okay, that's great. But like, I think at the time, like when I was like 28, like 27, 28, and I didn't really feel like I was getting any feedback, from, personally, I wasn't getting any feedback. Professionally, I wasn't getting any. And that's kind of when I hit my rut. I always say that like 27, 28 was like some of my hardest years, because I'm like, I should like feel more like an adult, right? And I don't really. I still don't. But that was kind of what made me shift. And like present day, like once I made that shift, I kind of dropped off all the boards, and I'm like slowly, now that I'm like feeling good in my new routine, trying to pick some stuff up. But that's been the path. So it's, yes, there were some things I probably left out on my first run around, but it feels like such a blur. I mean, just like I said, that was just the time where I was just like grinding. Honestly, I don't really know for what goal. I mean, it's definitely helped me to get where I am now. And now it's just kind of like, now what?
Yeah.
Because the thought of doing that, like, I can't do that again. I'm tired.
Right. I love it.
I get, like, hangovers now. I drink during the week. Like, my life is very different. So, we'll have to figure out how I'm going to do this in chapter 2 here.
That's amazing. So I love that you kind of touched on like the late 20s burnout, because I feel like that is a common theme that Chelsea and I talk about all the time. And like that's one of the reasons that we started this podcast, because like I was going through a career change. Chelsea was like hitting a wall, and I feel like it's something so common that especially like women go through, because you feel like you have to get out of college, get in the hustle, build everything by the time you're like 27 and then get married and have 2 kids. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like if you haven't hit your peak at 26 and 27, like, are you like, what are you doing with your life?
Right.
It's
That's
terrifying.
A big pressure.
It is. And so I love that you kind of touched on that. So what are kind of, I guess, the first like couple signs that you took and you realized, and then what kind of gave you the inspiration that you had to make a change?
I wish I had like a really inspiring formula.
No, you don't have to. It can just be...
I wish you did.
Yeah,
like actually.
Unfortunately, like I hit rock bottom. It was a very graceful fall to rock bottom. It like nothing really happened. It just like hit me one day. Where like I think maybe one of my first signs was just like my physical health. I mean, like. My metabolism was slowing down. I was eating like shit because I was like constantly just like never had time to like do anything. My relationships at the time felt actually like very surface level because like I was still networking when I really didn't need to be at that point. I probably need to be like fostering like actual relationships. So like everything just started to like deteriorate. Like my body was deteriorating, my soul was deteriorating. The work in and of itself like just stopped being challenging and interesting, and I just like stopped having fun. Like I think I hit that burnout of like, what am I doing? Like I'm supposed to be hitting all these I'm doing all these things, and people are telling me what a great job I'm doing, but then I'm coming home and I'm just like kind of staring at a wall, like, what the hell did I do today? And like, why am I doing any of this? Am I doing it just because like I'm being told to, or because I've gotten addicted to the attention and the press, and I feel like I need to outdo myself? Like, I really had kind of like a come to Jesus moment with myself, and also money. I mean, that's one thing that like. That really changed my path along the whole way. It was just like nobody wanted to talk about salaries. Nobody wanted to talk about money. I always grew up like really comfortably, and like my parents and I never had open dialogue about money. Like we always had it. I just kind of felt like it fell from the sky, I guess. And then even as I started to make my own money, I definitely wasn't managing it to the best that I could be. Wasn't in debt, but definitely wasn't saving. Still could be doing a lot better. So it was just like all those things where it was like I kind of hit that moment where I was like, I should feel better about everything because I've got all these things in front of my face, and I just didn't. And I got to the point where like I'm very extroverted. I love going out and talking to people, if you can't tell. And like I didn't want to go out in public. Like I didn't want to hang out with my friends. I didn't want to work out. I didn't want to eat healthy. And like, that was kind of when I was just like, all right, I think something's got to change. And like, naturally, I think just because like, we're told so much that like our job is our identity, I thought that I would start there. So I was like, oh, like that's supposed to be like the core of who I am, right? So if I change my job, like everything else will change, right? Sadly mistaken. That's not the spoiler alert. That is not the answer. Because even,
that, girl.
Because even when the work changed, like, that process was grueling. It took me like a year and a half. And that year and a half to the inception of, holy shit, I need to change, to, did I actually update my resume? Did I actually start applying? Like, I was probably only actively applying for jobs, like, I don't know, 6 months out of that, but the whole year and a half was like the identity crisis, going in and out of fear of getting started, but then going back into being distracted by things that weren't actually moving me forward. And then I had to like buckle down and be like, you're not going out, you're not going shopping, you're not going to get on Instagram or Facebook. Like everything that you should be doing should be around getting a new job. And if it's not helping you get a new job, like don't do it. And even then, like still definitely didn't follow that all the time.
Right.
But I had to have like some really honest conversations with myself. Something I'm trying to do now to help to not hit rock bottom is to surround myself with people who will be truth tellers for me. So if I start to pick up on those patterns again, I don't have to. I'll have someone say like, hey, you're kind of slipping. Because when you're doing it on your own, like hitting rock bottom usually is like the only way that it comes about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Otherwise, you just get in that perpetual cycle of, I know I should do something, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to watch Netflix instead. And then you just get into the same cycle over and over again.
Yeah.
You're not alone, right?
Not at all.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Did you know me in another
Right,
life?
exactly. And these types of like conversations were like a part of it, right? Was like realizing that like everyone's going through it to a certain extent. And that you're not alone, because so much of like why I was isolating myself is because I had this perception that everyone else around me was doing great, and they were getting married and having babies, and I just thought everyone else was so happy, and come to find out, like, that was not the case either. Even those people that have some of those things that you think are going to make you happy are actually not happy. So it was an interesting time, and I am being very careful now to not avoid those things because it's inevitable, that's a part of life, but how do you do it a little bit more gracefully?
I feel that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Still working on it.
Right. We all are.
It's like a lifelong thing.
It is. So kind of shifting more into what you're doing now, what are some things that you just like get you freaking jazzed about branding? And what are some things that you absolutely love about it more so than being in the ad world?
I think being able to focus on one brand like really helped. Like my personality definitely lends to having a lot of different interests and curiosities. So that's why I liked advertising, because I had clients like Fruit of the Loom and AutoZone and Vanity Fair and Russell Athletic. So I got to like kind of bounce around, but I didn't really get to like hone in on something. So the thing about branding that I love is like, first of all, being part of a global brand. I love this sense of community. So actually KFC comes together with all the other markets in the world once a year, and we go over like what their big marketing wins were, what their big sales wins were for the year, and just seeing how that brand is then translated across cultures, across continents, across languages. It's just like, that really gets me excited, especially when something like food. So also being in food, like my sister's a chef, my brother-in-law is a chef, so food is just like so central to my life. And when I travel, like food is the way that I connect with people and culture. So to be a part of that feels super exciting. And somewhat outside of the branding itself, just being a part of like product development is something that I probably would have never had exposure to staying in advertising. So last year I launched KFC USA's first exclusive beverage, Mtn Dew Sweet Lightning. And if you would have told me, hey, go get you some only at KFC. If you would have told me like 2 years ago that I'd be working with Mtn Dew and like creating a drink, like I've been like, I don't even drink soda, but I still don't. But I mean, like, drank a lot of soda then during the R&D process. But it's just so cool then to like go on Twitter and even seeing people hate the product. Like, it's just, people love it, people hate it. Like, we actually have like a fan account on Twitter that's been created for it. So it's like hilarious to see like memes that are being created. And it's just like, it's so cool to kind of watch that from behind the curtain and be like, oh, like I did that. That's pretty cool to see that. Sure. And just to have something tangible. There's obviously other food innovations. So the Cheeto sandwich that launched earlier, I keep saying earlier this year, it's 2020. Yeah. Last year, being able to see that, and again, like having those conversations. So again, like being a part of a brand that everybody knows. It doesn't matter where I travel to or where I go. I say I work for KFC. I say I work in fast food. People have an opinion. People have a story. People hate me. People love me. Like it's just so cool to have to be a part of something that literally everybody has an opinion about. So. The brand is beyond like the logo and the kernel and the advertising. Like that stuff is very much a part of it, but it's so much more like the stories that people start telling you. Like, oh, my grandma used to bring us KFC every day on Sunday, or why did you get rid of this product? Like, I used to love this thing. And like, that's the part of the brand process that is like intangible that I would have never expected, because going into it, I totally thought like, I'll be making ads and I'll be like hanging out with celebrities, and like, have actually yet to do any of that. There's a totally part of my team that does do that. It's very glamorous, don't get me wrong, but it's cool to be a part of the product development piece of it, and then how do you apply those products to fit within the brand and vice versa. So it's just been a huge learning opportunity for me, and can't wait to see kind of where it takes me from here.
That's amazing. So we have a huge section of our podcast that's dedicated to entrepreneurship, like people starting their own business. And one of the things that I struggled with the most when I launched my business is figuring out who to hire for branding, how to get the branding right. Should I even, do this? Should I do that? What are some pointers that you have for anyone who wants to start a business, who really wants to take their branding, messaging tone, that part of their business seriously?
So brand guidelines and brand standards, I think when you think about it, especially as an entrepreneur, you think about it very literally. It's fonts, it's the kerning, it's the logo, it's the colors, and those things are important. But it's also getting grounded in what your brand stands for, which I think a lot of brands, especially when you're getting started, overlook because it feels it's too templated, I stand for powerful women, or I stand for clean products. It feels everyone's talking about that, so you try to make it so difficult or so unique, when the reality is yes, there's a lot of products out there and there's a lot of people doing a lot of the same things, but you just need to pick something and apply that to everything that you do. We have an acronym at Yum Brands. This might be something I might have to think about. I'll say it and then I'll decide if we can put it in here or not. So something that we look about a brand, obviously our brand is the kernel, it's our colors, it's the bucket, it's the stripes. Yeah. But a big part of our brand is an acronym that we use across the Yum system called RED, which is relevant, easy, and distinct. And that is, I think, been a bigger part of our brand than any of our brand assets that we have. So everything we do has to be relevant to what's going on, whether it's from a product standpoint, how we communicate our products, the types of partnerships we're engaging. It has to be relevant. Easy is, it has to be easy to get. If you have to over explain it to someone, it's not it. We sell fried chicken. That's pretty easy to get. If we're trying to sell a fried chicken that has this topping and that and this fancy sauce that's made from here and magic elves that live here, if you have to over-explain it, oversell it, you're going to lose people. I mean, we all know how quick everyone's moving and how short people's attention spans are these days. If it's not easy, you're already out. And distinct is how do you make it distinct to your brand and what you have to offer? So what makes it distinctly your company or your brand? And that's how brands grow over time, is that you stick to some key principles on what your brand stands for, and you apply that across everything that you do. So I think people get bogged down in the way a logo looks, and they don't focus too much on what the brand is actually selling and standing for. Yeah. So I think it's just going back to the why. Why are you doing what you're doing, and what do you want people to feel and recognize when they see your brand? And then just having some discipline on it for a while, knowing that things are going to change and evolve, but just really sticking to something for a while just to see how it goes. Yeah. I don't know if that was a great answer, but there you go.
No, that was absolutely perfect. That was perfect. Absolutely. So earlier you kind of touched on how you were the head of diversity and inclusion for a group here in Louisville. And I know that you've also got involved at KFC US with some diversity inclusion groups. So let's kind of go through that and how you got involved and why that's a passion of yours and why you wanted to get involved.
Yeah, I'll try not to get too long-winded because this is where I tend to hop off my soapbox. I'll just brush off my soapbox here.
Girl, absolutely.
So the why for me is, you can't see me through the podcast, but I am a Korean American adoptee, so I have a very interesting relationship with race in general. So my parents are white, and me and my sister are Korean. And that comes with a lot of baggage and a lot of other areas, but we can save that for another podcast, maybe for another time. That being said, I grew up mostly I've done most of my growing up in the Midwest. So I lived on the East Coast for 10 years and then moved to Cincinnati and now Louisville, where I have been a minority for the majority of my adult life. So I've always grown up in a world where nobody looked like me. And I never realized how much damage that did to me growing up, because I could never physically envision myself in certain positions, because every time I opened up a magazine or I turned on the TV or I walked on the streets, I never saw people who looked like me. So it was a subconscious thing in the back of my head telling me that I couldn't do something or that could never be me. And it really wasn't until basically our generation and just how the U.S. population is changing, I think the openness that our generation has, and just all the movement that's been being done in the media to finally get representation, that really made me realize, like, oh, like, people are out here, like, championing for this stuff, and it has affected me my entire life. Like, I should hop in on the train. So, like, that's kind of my why. And what I'm doing now is that I'm just trying to help open up the conversation, because I think companies, especially in my space in corporate America, obviously some are doing it much better than others, but, like, we're in the Midwest, so, like, I can only speak for, like, our slice of the pie, and, like, we just have, like, so much work to do. And it really is, like, going all back to that piece is just, everybody, I think, deserves to physically see themselves in a place of leadership, and a place of representation at the top, in the middle, like, everywhere. And I think in the past, people really looked at diversity and inclusion as, like, let's just get a bunch of brown people here and it's going to fix everything.
Yep.
And the conversation, especially in this part of the country, is moving very slowly, because it's no longer even about diversity and inclusion, it's about equity. So it's not about, like, how many brown people can we get there and can we make them feel good? But it's like, are we actually setting these people up for success? Are we actually recognizing that these people have different experiences than the majority here? And I mean, just, like, I won't get into it because I can't even talk about, like, politics, and I'm just not educated enough to do so. But I mean, you just look at, like, where our country is today, and we are just we're more divided now than maybe ever.
Yeah.
And ironically, the way our population is actually moved, like, we have, like, more ethnic people now than we ever have before.
Yeah.
And, like, you hear these crazy stats that, like, by 2042, like, there'll no longer be, like, one race in the United States. I don't know if that's true or not. Don't quote me on that. But it's just, I want to be a part of how we get everybody feeling comfortable talking about race, no different than, like, talking about money. Like, all these things that we've been closed off and told not to talk about because it's inappropriate to talk at the dinner table, like, what the hell ever the rule has been, I think has, like, left more damage on people than just being able to feel encouraged to have conversations. And I have found the most success not out of any of these committees. I mean, not to say you shouldn't be on these committees and you shouldn't advocate, but it's more out of relationships. I mean, it has, any of the actual movement I've made or I've seen happen have all been in one-on-one relationships where people step back and they say, like, oh, I've never met anyone like you, or I've never met anyone with your background before, or I've never seen that food, or, like, what is that? It's like, it's these little moments that build up that make you understand, like, people are just people, and people are people, and we need to recognize that, like, everyone has different experiences, and they're all valid, and everybody has a chance to be seen and to be heard, because this idea of, like, let's just treat everybody like we're the same, I think is doing every person of color a huge service, because it's basically saying all the discrimination, all the things that have happened to you don't matter because I don't see color and you're a person too, and just like I am. And I think it's a really dangerous place to be when you don't acknowledge that there are some very ugly truths about people who look different because they have very different experiences.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the original question was, but that's my soapbox.
No, I love that. No, that's so good. I think you touched on some really good things, because I have, like, in the past, like, I've worked for companies who have just been, like, terrible, who have been like, we're going to hire someone. Well, this girl's, like, an Asian woman, so we should definitely just hire her because, like, I just want people to think that we're, like, inclusive. It's like, that's absolutely not organic. That's not how you're supposed to go about that at all. So I love that you kind of touched on, it's not about just picking someone and just, like, hiring a bunch of people. It's more about, like, equity and, like, considering and giving people opportunities.
Absolutely.
Because in the past it has been very much like, oh, he's my friend. He's, like, some white dude that went to Trinity. Like, let's just hire him because he's my friend. It's like giving opportunities to people who are actually worthy and giving them the space and the platform to succeed. So I really love that point.
That was a big part of it. Like, earlier in my career and, like, earlier in my life in general, I never knew what tokenism was, and I never knew, like, how damaging it was. So, like, regardless of how anyone got to where they were, right, like, I'll never be able to tell if I was a hire to check a box. Like, that's just the God honest truth. And, like, do I hope that that's not the situation? Sure. But could that have been? Absolutely could have been. And I'll never know that. But I never realized that, like, you know, signing up to, like, be the girl in the video or be the face on the picture, like, I thought that those was doing enough, but then I realized, like, oh, I'm just being used as, like, a token, And to your point, it's like, yeah, like I'm just checking a box for someone somewhere and I'm really not helping the cause. And it's not to say that those things aren't going to still continue to happen, because they are.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do you then do the meaningful work on the back end of it as well?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if you're going to use me as a token, that's fine. But then I want to make sure that I'm actually like being a part of the constructive work that's going to move everyone forward. Because for us to believe that just the way you look means that you are not as qualified as other people, or there aren't as many qualified people who look like someone else, is just completely insane.
Yeah.
And I get into like, I cringe when I start to have these conversations where people are like, well, it should go to the most qualified candidates. Like, yeah, well, no shit.
Yeah.
But like when you say that, what you're implying is that the most qualified candidate always looks a certain way.
Yeah.
And that the most qualified person could never look like this.
Yeah.
And if that person gets the job, it must be because we're checking a box. It's like, you don't understand how like innately racist that comment is when people say like, it should go to the most qualified person.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's what we all want. And
Right.
there are people who are just as qualified as other people who look completely different. So that would be like my end goal is, you know, I may not ever see it in my human lifetime here, but if I can help be a part of like just changing the conversation and some of the language and just calling out like, hey, there's some like fundamental flaws in the way that we're doing it.
Yeah.
That would be like a big, like peaceful thing for me to go out on. So
I love that.
we'll see.
What
Keep
do you-
fighting the good fight.
What would you say to, I mean, obviously, like, Chelsea and I are, like, white AF. Like,
I
what
was
would you...
I was like, oh my gosh, I told
What,
him, like,
yeah.
everybody's
Yeah.
like, I love everybody.
Yeah. What
like,
would
oh.
you say are some, I guess, maybe some advice that we could
Yes.
do to help be better allies?
Because, like, straight up when you were saying, like, the person's like, I don't see color, I like, that's me.
That's Chelsea.
I don't mean, like, I didn't even know that was, like, racist. I didn't. I 100%, I thought that was me being, like, open-minded and, like, you're a human, I'm a human, it shouldn't matter. Because,
Right.
I don't think it should, and I guess maybe that's the wrong way to look at it.
Chelsea's also a little sheltered baby, so, you know what I
It's
mean?
totally, I mean, this is a perfect way to be an ally, right? It's
Yeah.
like just getting to know people. And, like, just for clarification, I don't think that the statement, I don't see color as innately racist. I think it's just leaving out a huge, detail for people who are, you know, a person of color and have experienced other things, because the reality is in this country is that if you look a certain way, you're going to have a drastically different human experience than the majority. So to be a better ally, most of it is just like these types of conversations. It's just like getting to know people, asking them and acknowledging that they have different experiences is first and foremost. There's also a very big conversation, especially within like women and feminism. I don't remember how long ago it was. It was like a couple years ago, I want to say. There was this big, what's the word I'm looking for? Not eruption. That sounds so dramatic. Movement, or there was a conversation that was open among feminists that said, like, it was basically a black woman writing to white women saying, like, hey, feminism, like, is actually only benefiting white women. And if you're going to speak and be all about women, you need to recognize that, like, women of color, especially black women, are being left behind and being left out of these conversations. And when we start talking about feminism in a certain way and in a certain light, you're leaving a big portion of women out of the conversation. So that's as far as I can really speak on it, because I'll be honest, I haven't done a great job at even diving deeper into that. If you guys are not familiar with Red Table Talks, they have some great content there, just even watching stuff like that. And even for me, I was actually having this exact conversation today, like, even as a person of color, I have a lot to learn about other people as well. I used to have a tendency to, like, not like bash on white people, but just think like, oh, they don't get it. And then I had to like even soften my heart to be like, oh, like, right now white people are kind of in the spotlight, right? And like this idea of like white guilt is kind of a new term for a lot of people. And like people they feel guilty for being white. They feel like I never meant to hurt people. I never meant to be a certain way. I didn't realize these things that I was saying or doing was hurting other people. And now it's just caused this huge conversation to open up. And for me, like, getting to understand the Black community and and the struggles that they have. I was having a conversation with some of my colleagues about Juneteenth, and I was like, I don't really understand what that is. I see people post about it on social media, but like, could you educate me? And, you know, they're talking about how, like, you know, that was the day that slaves were set free. And while a lot of Black holidays here in America are about, like, celebration, like Martin Luther King Day and Black History Month, this particular holiday has a lot of tension because it's directly tied to slavery. And it's like, we love to talk about Black people, and we love to talk about celebrating Black culture, but we never want to say the S word. And anytime the word slavery gets brought up, then everybody starts to kind of tense up. So I had that moment too where I was like, I will just be honest, like, I don't know anything about it. If there's a place I can go to observe or I can learn more, like, can you send me? Because I want to know. I don't want to say anything. I just want to sit and listen. So I think allyship is always going to look different for every person, and it depends on what type of people are within your reach and what types of resources you have. But I think more often than not, it just starts with a conversation and really being honest with, like, where you are and recognizing that maybe someone else, even though they are a human, has probably had a very different experience than you, and just being open to hearing that.
Absolutely. I feel like I appreciate the fact that you kind of touched a little bit on white feminism, because it's something I really didn't have a solid concept of. And I know that, like, when there were all these, like, women's rallies back in, what was it, 2016, I guess? Was it when Trump was elected, or was it before that? I don't remember. When all these, like, huge rallies were happening, and it's like everyone just had this, like, idea of, like, everyone wear pink, everyone wear a pussy hat, everyone just, like, get together. And I remember, like, Taylor Swift was, like, doing this whole tour where she was bringing all these, like, models on stage with her and being, like, women power, but they were, like, all 6 feet tall, all white, all super skinny, and it was just, like, but at the time, I was like, yes, like, let's get psyched about this. And I remember, like, one of my Black friends was living in LA, and she's like, Lee, you realize how, like, kind of messed up this is? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is amazing. Women power. And she's like, no, like, they're essentially just saying, like, let's raise up women, but only if they, like, look this certain way and, like, look badass. And they're, like, this, like, perfect blonde, muscular, like, essential, like, Captain Marvel-esque sort of woman. And so I thought that was, like, a very, like, important moment for me to just, like, sit back and listen and not read, because I think that sometimes we can get really overwhelmed with different articles that people are, like, tweeting out, and different, like, essentially articles and posts and blog posts that you feel like people are, like, yelling at you and who don't really know you and don't know what experiences you have. So I love that you talked about that, because I think it is so important to just sit down face to face and have a conversation. And because that's what made me really understand, rather than just, like, reading an opinion piece from, like, the New Yorker of someone who I have no idea who they are.
Right.
So
it's great. And I think it's also, like, our generation gets so overwhelmed because we have access to so much information, but, like, the reality is we as individuals can only do so much, because we only are one person in one part of the country during, like, one slice of finite time. So I think it's, like, also encouraging people to know, like, you can't change everything and everyone. Like, the only thing that you can really do is, like, what is immediately in front of you and what you have access to. So what can you do, like, every day just to better your relationships, or to get yourself out there, or to ask more courageous questions and be more vulnerable, just to admit, like, I don't know, or ask somebody, like, what do you think about white women, or what does white privilege mean to you? And just to be open to hearing it and asking those questions, I think is, like, something that would help a lot of people. Because to your point, like, I think everybody feels like, oh, I need to go donate, or I need to go, like, rally. And a lot of times we jump into those actions without even understanding what you may inadvertently be standing for. So I think it's just, like, before you go and, like, buy all the pussy hats and make the posters and stuff, like, is there somebody within your immediate reach that you can just have a really honest conversation about? But I think the more we can talk about race and money as women and as millennials and as humans, I think, like, those are things that we just have always been told not to talk about. And I think there is a lot of healing across the board for everyone if we just start talking about those things.
I love that. That's amazing. Speaking of money, I'm glad you brought that up in your last sentence. Chelsea and I, well, mostly Chelsea, she's been on this journey lately of kind of finding her self-worth and figuring out, like, you know, how do you ask for more money? How do you, you know, negotiate different rates.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of the hardest conversations because you don't want to go in and just like, I want $200,000 back, like, or, you don't want to undersell yourself. So what are kind of a couple of pointers? What are different ways that you can realize like what your self-worth is and feel confident in that going into either your boss or an interviewer?
Yeah.
Etc.
I think from a really tangible standpoint, it's for me the biggest unlock for me was just finding a mentor or a friend that was willing to have an open conversation with me. So when I first started out, and it was like, what do you want as a salary? And I know that like if you're in a freelance standpoint, it's somewhat different, but there's like similar principles that you can apply. And it's like, I don't know, like $30,000 sounds great. I've never made $30,000 before. And then you go and you make $30,000, you're like, oh my God, I'm poor. And I say that with the utmost privilege because there's a lot of people I think who would die to make $30,000 a year. So it's all relative first and foremost, but it's like having someone to be like, oh, actually, when I was working in a similar role, I was actually making 45, and I was like, oh shit, like I've been over here like not making as much as I could or should, and then a lot of it is just communicating. Depending on what type of organization you're in or like what your situation is, it's usually not built into the system to have conversations about raises or performances. I mean, that was my biggest struggle in the agency setting, was that there was no type of formal career tracking whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was like me just having the balls, quite frankly, to go in and be like, I want a raise. And then quickly learning that, like, budget planning and, like, you can't just go and ask for a raise and get it the next day. So it's like, then I started to be smart about it and asking for a raise the year before and saying, hey, in the next year, I would like to be making $36,000. So what do I need to be doing from now until then so that when this time next year rolls around and you're planning for the budget for next year, for you to say yes to 36, what do I have to be doing from now until then? Mm-hmm. So some of it was just like, having the courage to have the conversations. Some of it, I'll be quite frank, has just been guesswork. Like, there's been plenty of times that, like, I've gone in to ask for a raise or a negotiation. I'm like, I want to be making 70. And I pulled that number out of the sky, and it was like, okay. It's like, oh, that was easy. Like, I mean, not that it was easy, but, like, there are some times where, like, you just don't know. But it really, nothing unlocked for me about the salary conversation until I had a woman in my network who was willing to tell me how much she was making doing that role. Mm-hmm. And it's still not easy. So what my tactic has been, when I get into a good relationship with a woman, and it's mostly been women, like, I'll be honest, I don't think I have a single male in my network, now that I'm thinking about it, mm-hmm. that I have that type of transparency with. So I think there's maybe something to that, maybe not, I don't know. Yeah, I would love to have more of a male allyship in that sense. Maybe that can be a good goal for me. But it really wasn't until I was willing to, I would just start offering that. I would just start saying, like, I make this amount of money. Mm-hmm. And then just, like, seeing if I could get the conversation to be comfortable enough where they would be like, oh, well, like, I was actually making this, or I'm making that. Because still to this day, the idea of going up to someone and being like, how much money do you make? Is like some people will just be like, oh, fuck you, that's really rude.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's not I make it sound easy, but it's not. Like, you have to make good relationships, and you have to be willing to be the vulnerable one first to put it out there. Or you have to be willing to say, like, hey, like, my financial goal for the year would be to be making $80,000. Like, what should I be doing to be getting there? And then also just, like, little stuff. I mean, it's so different now. Like, LinkedIn has, like, salary summaries and Glassdoor. Like, there are also resources out there that, like, just weren't there before. Yeah, so I would definitely encourage anyone to do just a Google search to figure out, like, what is the general salary or rate you should be charging, and then making those friends within your same realm to ask, what are you charging to do X, or how much were you making doing this? Mm-hmm. And then just continuing to do it. And then I think for me, kind of where I'm at now, is also looking at, like, what role does money play in my life? Because I think at one point I got really caught up in what society wanted me to subscribe to, that how much money I made equaled how much I was worth or how great I was at something or not. So, and I still, that still, like, goes back and forth sometimes for me. Right. Sometimes I have moments of, like, I am not a number. And then sometimes I'm like, I'm a bad bitch and I should be making more money. And, like, the fact that this person
the internal struggle.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Exactly. It's like, oh, this person making this. They don't do shit. Like, I should be making way more than that. So, and then it's also just recognizing when it's, like, just time to move on. Like, whether it is, like, an ego check of maybe starting something and it wasn't fruitful, so maybe it is time to get a side hustle or go back and do something else. Or maybe where you're at, even though you love it, you're never going to reach your financial salary goal there, and it's time to move on to, like, another place. And, like, it's, like, money just is, like, it's so multifaceted, and it's beyond just negotiating and asking for more money. It is, like, how are you also living your current lifestyle, and, like, what are you trying to ultimately achieve, and, like, what do you want to obtain material-wise and beyond, and what do you know about investing and saving? And if you don't, because those are, like, dirty words in my vocabulary, like, how do you find people who are comfortable in those topics that can help baby step you? Because I just got into investing within this past year, and it was just, like, such a painful process of all the YouTube videos, of all the ebooks, everything that's out there. Like, none of it was resonating with me. And it wasn't until I sat down with a friend who I, like, really trusted, because it's your money at the end of the day, that you're trusting this person with, that really, and again, like, I could be totally following someone's advice that doesn't know what the hell they're doing, but I'm going for it, you know, and it was really my first dip in it, and I've been very, like, avoidant of it. Like, I put it in there and I haven't looked at it, I don't log in, like, I don't look at it, I don't manage it.
Way to do it,
and it's, I'm not suggesting this to anyone, by the way, but if you're like me, it can be really scary. So a lot of it for me is just, like, kind of looking it in its face and being like, I gotta stop making this, like, the green-eyed monster, and just figure out, like, how do I get more comfortable talking about investing, how do I get comfortable talking about money and saving and financial goals. And it's a big thing for me this year to be like, if I can't talk about money with the people who are in my immediate circle, I've got to shift, because, like, there was definitely a point where I felt like I was surrounding myself with people who were also like me, and it was like a bunch of addicts hanging out, like, we're all spending money, we're all not talking about it, it's great, it's fun. And then I was like, okay, like, you guys are great, I love you, and, like, it's been a lot of fun, but, like, I have to, like, put on my adult pants here and realize that, like, it's something that I really am not comfortable with, and how do I find new people to help me get out of that?
I also think when you're asking for a raise, like, you can't just, like, go ask for one. Like, you got to put in the work and, like, be deserving of a raise. You can't just, like, sit on your butt and be like, well, Shannon's making this, so I want to make that. Well, Shannon's probably staying late and putting in extra time and, like, excelling, and she deserves a raise.
It's very true, and, like, the other piece of that is, like, putting it on the company to give you that feedback, because I think a lot of times what I see is, like, my friends will be like, I worked so hard and they didn't give me the raise I wanted. And it's, like, again, going back to that communication and, like, even, like, having checkpoints in it. I'm just like, okay, like, you as my employer or as my boss, whatever your situation is, like, again, if I want to be here, I need feedback from you to tell me what I should be doing. And if I'm doing these things, like, working together is the ideal situation. I realize, like, not everyone's in that position. I'm lucky enough that I'm in an environment where that is the culture. So it's like, if I'm trying to achieve this, I should be getting feedback on how I get there, so that it takes the guesswork out of it, so that that disappointment won't happen. Because I see that happen a lot too, where it's like, you hope people are gonna notice the work, and then they don't, and then the year comes up and they're like, oh, well, it's not in the budget, or, oh, we didn't even know you wanted a raise. Like, that was a lesson that I learned, like, early in my career, was that somebody told me they didn't even know I wanted one. And I was like, dude, we had this conversation. Like,
well, I think to be on that a little bit, it's like, in sales, one of the things that we talk about a lot is, like, if your current vendor, like, they provide a service for your company, and they've trying to drop the ball on things, and it's like, and then they come back and like, well, you're missing this, this, and this, why? And like, oh, well, we'll give you all this for free. And in the same breath, it's like, well, why weren't you doing that? Like, I'm a human. Like, I have bills to pay. I have places I want to go, people I want to see, things I want to buy. Why wouldn't I want to raise?
Right.
Like, if I'm going to be a valuable, like, asset to your company, like, treat me like it. Like, you didn't think I wanted to raise? Like, do you wake up in the morning?
Like, exactly.
I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's silly.
It is so much of that communication piece, and just setting the expectation, and then also, like, something that I started doing kind of early, I don't have to do it now because I'm in a company that it's a part of the formal process, was I was just making, like, one-sheeters on myself of just saying, like, this is what I accomplished in year one. It was like a bullet list of, like, did this account, worked on that project, helped bring this thing in, helped save the money in this area. And I started that conversation with the people who were controlling my financial fate at my company. For them to be like, oh, and it's kind of like, they don't know what you're doing. You know, like, I might be like 2 or 3 steps removed from the CEO. He has no idea what I'm up to, and he's the one who's signing my check. So, like, I should probably be letting him know what I'm up to. And it's kind of like, oh, you like everything that was on here? You didn't know that was me? Cool. You want me to do this again and double it next year? You gotta meet me halfway with this. And that's where I started seeing some success in environments where I didn't have that structure. Now, thank God, I'm at a company where, like, that's a part of the career track. But for people who are not in that situation, I definitely encourage, like, just putting together, like, a one-sheeter of, like, the things that you did that year.
Absolutely.
Too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So what are some goals you've set for yourself for 2020?
Oh, man. I think this was the one when you told me. I was like, oh, shit. I don't know if I'm ready to answer that.
It could also be that your goal is to not have any goals.
Yeah.
You can just say whatever you want.
The first one, I mean, going back to the money conversation, is definitely to continue that journey of saving and investing more and just strengthening that muscle and not being so afraid and just holding myself accountable. Budgeting is so hard for me, so it's more of like an emotional and mental budget for me of like spending the money on the things that like I really actually want to spend money on, even if it doesn't feel like it's that big of a deal. Like, there was one year I had done like the Birchbox thing and I had all these beauty samples, but I was still going to Sephora and dropping like $300 like we all do every time we go. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I have a drawer full of samples that I could be using that I'm not, or I have like 3/4 bottles of shampoo that are like sitting at the bottom of my thing that I didn't want to finish and I want to try a new brand, so I bought a new one. And I only have like 9 bottles of shampoo under my sink that are not used. Like, those are things that like, do I really want to be spending my money on shampoo? Like, no, not really. So I'm starting to do like mental inventory of the things I actually want to spend my money on. And on the other side of that is, like, consuming what I consume. Like, I was definitely in a place of, like, living in excess. And then I had this experience of traveling with a friend where we stayed with her friend who lived very minimally. She had 4 cups, 4 plates, 1 knife, 1 pot. And, like, you're just like, how do you get anything done? But we made a whole meal. Like, we cooked something in the pot. We put it in the microwave. And then we rinsed it out, and we cooked the next thing. And, like, you didn't think you could get it done, but you did. And then I started doing my own inventory because I'm single, living alone. I had, like, 14 coffee cups. I'm like, I got 14 friends, and we're definitely not all going to drink coffee at the same time. So I just started getting rid of shit. Like, that's been, like, a thing in my life, and I want to continue that. My clothing and my like material stuff has been really easy. My next thing has been food. I waste so much food. I would go into my refrigerator and I'll probably tell you I have no food, and like I could probably feed 5 families right now. Like, I've got noodles and rice and like things in my cabinet that have traveled with me from 3 moves ago. That like I haven't consumed. So so it's just
absolutely.
It's like the money thing, the consumption piece, and I think another thing is just continuing to speak my truth. That's always something that I'm working on, but like doing it in a more graceful way. I think the past like few years, I was just getting so used to my own voice and my own truth coming out that it came up very like defensive or angry or apologetic sometimes, where it's like this year I really want to hone in on just like speaking it gracefully and smoothly and not over explaining it and then moving on. And then maybe the last thing is just like feeding my soul a little bit more. I think a lot of times, like even this past year, my resolutions have been focused on like starving my body or feeding other habits, or like it's always like these other dynamics. And this year's just going to be about like feeding my soul. Like if I want to eat a bowl of spaghetti, like let's do it and like move on to the next thing. Let's not do it every night, but if I want to go dance, go dance. If I want to go hang out with friends, do it. If I want to spend alone, like do it without having to like over cram my schedule and make it complicated. I just want to be able to like move about the cabin like a little bit more smoothly this year. So
that's amazing.
We'll see how it goes. We'll check in mid-year. We'll see how
I have faith. So kind of at the end of the podcast, we like to give you, a minute, 2 minutes to kind of, if you want to make like some sort of statement that we didn't talk about. If you want to talk about anything that's just on your mind lately, this is kind of like the free yoga at the end of the yoga class where you just get to do whatever pose you want. Is there anything that's just pressing on your mind that you would like people to remember about you?
Sure. I would say that your personal freedom is very important. And one of the best things I ever did for myself was just saying what I meant and meant what I said. And this could be a whole other topic, but I got into like a conversation with girlfriends about like having sex and like getting through it, right? Like I think a lot of women have had this experience, and it really opened up like a literal example for me of like, if you're not enjoying something, like stop. Like say, hey, this doesn't feel good anymore. Like I don't want to do this, and like meaning it. And like if you want something, like say it, and if you don't, say it. And I still stumble over that in certain situations. Like I've gotten much better at it, but like I just encourage anyone who ends up listening to this, like really get in touch with what you want and what you don't want and feels good and doesn't for your own self. Like not so much in the selfish way, because I think where people get caught up is like, I'm a people pleaser, I want everyone to be happy. It's just like understand that like you owe something to yourself to like do what is good and do what feels nice, and if it doesn't, like don't fucking do it. And you have a voice and you should use it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people kind of take it like that you're rude to other people. Like, I don't want to talk to you, bye. Yeah. You can still be really nice to people.
Yeah.
And be like inclusive to people, but you don't have to do it just because they want you to.
Yeah. You don't owe anyone anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like,
I love that.
Yeah, we always talk about like the guy at the gym who like wants to talk to you and you're working out. Like again, you don't have to be a bitch to him, but you have to be like, I really don't want to talk right now. I'm going to go back and work out. Have a great day. Like you can just be really sweet about it. Or hey, you said that thing in a meeting and it really hurt my feelings. So can you not say that like that again? Like you can just have courageous conversations with other people and like move on, and you don't have to say any more.
Yeah,
I love it. Awesome. Well, Kara, thanks so much for being on the pod today. You can now, since we're Girl Hustle, I guess, like follow us on our new Instagram, Girl Hustle Podcast. Like us on Facebook, give us a rating and review. It helps our ratings. And we will see you back next week for another episode. Bye!